Welcome to Property Exams, Property Condition, and Maintenance Podcast. This audio series looks at building construction, operation, maintenance, and renovation. This podcast is brought to you by FLIR Diagnostic Equipment, the makers of the finest infrared cameras in the world, and all the cameras I use daily. I'm Scott Harris, and today we are discussing adventures in BS thermography, or building science. This talk is directed primarily at thermographers or anyone curious about adding infrared thermography to their business and how it might help. It is certainly worthwhile to anyone interested in infrared thermography or building science and how these two different disciplines can come together. I'm a seasoned home inspector of over 20 years and a lifetime engineer builder. I've been a thermographer for over 12 years. I've been a level 2 for most of that time, and I've been a level 3 for the last 4 years. I've gone through several cameras, but I have a tendency to keep higher resolution units. Like most home inspectors, I'm sort of a building nerd. I've done a lot of different things where I am, and what I do now really rocks for me. I've totally embraced infrared technology. I've made its presence a driving force in my business. I am always looking for new ways to promote infrared and find new ways to apply its capabilities. Infrared and building science sprang into my little world about a decade ago. Back then, I did mold testing, and I still do for clients who have mold problems or concerns. I've always been a problem solver. I would often tell these mold clients that in order to stop the problem with fungal growth or mold, they had to stop the moisture intrusion that was feeding the mold growth. These people would invariably ask me, where is the moisture coming from? I would go into long, typically vague, canned dialogue that basically broke down to, it looks like this or that, but I can't really tell till we open up the walls. This was not particularly satisfying for me, and I'm sure it wasn't so much for them either. Infrared changed all that and gave me a weapon to apply to this problem. I can now often show exactly where the moisture is coming from and estimate what it might take to fix the problem. This is much more satisfying. Infrared changed a lot of things for me and my clients. Most home inspectors buy a camera and then try to figure out how to integrate it into their business. Everyone tries the same stuff. They use it as an add-on service for an extra fee, or do it on all of them and charge a little more to justify the expense. I tried both and settled on the latter. At least with regards to home inspections, I find many other ways to utilize infrared in my business, all better and more specific than the use during home inspections. Home inspections, I do an infrared scan for moisture intrusion on every building I inspect. One of the areas that infrared is often used or referred to being used is for energy audits on both residential and commercial buildings. In one of my earlier iterations of life, I was a consulting startup engineer for power plants. Energy use, its distribution, waste, and conservation is very interesting to me. One of the first additional uses for infrared that I sought to incorporate as a sideline was energy use analysis. It seemed like a no-brainer, and truthfully, it really is. Unfortunately, the energy efficiency bureaucracy machine, whatever you want to call it, hasn't quite figured it all out. Regardless, I went out and became a Building Performance Institute building analyst and weatherization technician. After a while, I became a Building Performance Institute trainer. I've done a lot of technical training in the past, so this isn't really such a big leap. I taught building analyst training up and down the West Coast for several years. For anyone who knows this system, it does not require the use of infrared. However, I have to tell you unequivocally, the only way to do an energy audit is with the use of infrared. The only way to efficiently go through a whole house and check for leakage is with the use of an infrared camera. Once you have a blower door set up, using smoke or anything else would take hours and never come close to the same accuracy as 10 minutes with an infrared camera. The bureaucratic credit systems send some customers to get energy audits. Many of these people are focused on energy savings and kickback money. They don't really want to spend extra money on analysis, and so there is a problem with the whole concept. Most of these clients I've had for this are more interested in comfort than savings, and they are particularly interested in what infrared has to offer in this application. It continues to be a steady, if not substantial, aspect of my work. Commercial roof analysis is a big deal with infrared. Hands down, it is the single biggest and best billing center for standalone infrared services in the building science realm. The most fun I've ever had as an inspector thermographer is hanging out the open side of a helicopter in the dark, shooting the 150,000 square foot roof of the Tillamook cheese factory. That was a hoot. Don't worry, not everyone wants or needs to hang out of airplanes to do these. I used to be a big skydiver, and I still jump at the chance to do these big roofs this way. It's just as good and probably more profitable to walk the roof with a camera and survey it with your feet on solid roof, so to speak. Most roofs aren't big enough to warrant aerial survey from a helicopter anyway. However, if you can swing it, it's a lot of fun and a great way to cover a lot of roof in a short time frame. Currently, I have an infrared camera mounted on a drone, and I find this to be the very best of all worlds to analyze a flat commercial roof. It just gives you a better perspective than either an aircraft or walking on the roof. You can control the distance from the roof more than any other way, and it just gives you a really great image that you can use to analyze the roof condition and to show your clients. One of the other ways that I've been asked to apply infrared in building science is to analyze block wall construction. Now, as a standalone service, I don't get a lot of these, but I do get a few. I do a lot of them as part of a whole commercial property inspection. It's great to be able to tell and show clients that the wall, the building is constructed of was built correctly. There are filled structural pilasters that are reinforced in the wall, and the wall should be quite durable. Being able to show people things that cannot be seen through other means pays huge dividends. These surprisingly small things that we as thermographers can take for granted are what add to all of our reputations and sell the public on this science as a whole. I never miss an opportunity to show anyone my camera when I have it out or include a pertinent photo in a report. These people tell other people and keep our phones ringing. Another standalone service is electrical survey. This is probably the second most important standalone infrared service. It's close behind commercial roofing. I have managed to partner with several great electrical companies in my area. They, in turn, recommend me to their clients. I, in turn, use them to open and close the electrical panels that I am to survey. I always have 2 electricians to open and close the panels. I never do that part myself. Besides the fact that it's tedious, there's no way I want the responsibility or liability of, manipulating the panels. I had my attitude about this reinforced when an electrician caused a faulty breaker to fail, feeding the emergency room of a small hospital. It all worked out in the long run, but I was sure glad that this issue wasn't on me at the time. I still do the electrical scans on that facility every year since then, largely because of the way that this problem was handled at the time and that there were qualified electricians that were in charge of that part of the service. I offer this service to also have the electricians do what repairs they can to the panels rather than have them come back after the fact, after I turn in a report and go back to do repairs. Most of the things that you find doing an infrared survey of electrical panels involve tightening the lugs and sometimes replacing a small breaker here and there and small repairs that really don't take very much time to do. However, if the electricians have to come back to the panels to redo this, it's a whole hee-haw hootenanny, and there are additional costs involved. So having electricians there at the time when the panels are being analyzed, making what corrections they can, provides a much better service to the clients. And it really is the only way that this should be done. Finding this work is a little more difficult. I have several medical facilities that I do this service for, and their insurance companies basically require them to do it, and then the clients in turn find me through my internet marketing and other marketing that I do. I also have gotten into manufacturing facilities, large and even some that are fairly small, because if they have any failure of their power distribution system, the shutdowns can be very costly. So more and more manufacturing facilities are figuring out that this is a great technology that can help prevent unscheduled shutdowns. And it's really quite pleasant work. The mainstay of what I do on every commercial and residential property that I inspect, that I do a whole inspection of, is I do a infrared scan of the building envelope for moisture intrusion. This is really one of the more valuable things that I do for my clients. Most of the time, I don't find a problem, but that makes a statement that I didn't find any moisture intrusion or moisture entrapment a definitive statement. It's not a vague statement. I really have a pretty good idea that there isn't any problem with the building envelope when I do a full moisture intrusion scan of the building envelope from the interior of the building. This peace of mind is really quite priceless, particularly here in the Pacific Northwest, but in most of the country it rains at different times. Some of the more arid climates have so much air conditioning going on that they have entrapped moisture problems due to the moisture produced from air conditioning equipment. So, everybody really needs this. There's a lot of other stuff going on with infrared, and I get pulled into a lot of stuff, and it's really pretty interesting. If there's anything I can do, I want to take it on. I'm a can-do kind of person, and sometimes these oddball, requests are pretty interesting. I got called to find out if there were bats infesting a roof in a really, really huge older house. I was able to find concentrations of, where these bats were in the vaulted ceiling. You could actually see the body heat in certain areas. This was pretty interesting. They ultimately ended up tearing off the roof and rebuilding the framing and the venting to isolate the roof voids and not have these animals living in there. And there were literally thousands of bats in the roof. Over the years, I've been asked to check out heat loss in large modular walls, injuries to both human beings and equine athletes. I'm a equestrian myself, so I know a lot of horse people. I've done a lot of saddle fittings for horses. I've looked for water leaks in walls and floors. I've gotten phone calls, and people have asked me to look at someone's breast to see if there's lumps and things in it. I usually turn that stuff down. As fun as that might sound, I don't think it would make my lovely wife very comfortable. And I have no medical credentials. I'm not going to go down that road. Although there are people who do that and have had great luck with it. I'm very excited to see what new and unusual applications may come around the corner next for this technology. And it's really kind of changed my life. Infrared has made, the main job that I do much more interesting, and the answers that I'm able to obtain for people a lot more satisfying. I'm Scott Harris. Thanks for listening to Property Exam's Property Condition and Maintenance Podcast, sponsored by FLIR Diagnostic Equipment, my absolute favorite manufacturer of infrared cameras. This podcast is provided by Property Exam Corporation. There is no intent to provide service or specific advice, only share general information and the personal opinions of the host. For additional information about Property Exam, go to propertyexam.com. For information about FLIR cameras, go to FLIR.com. We will also release new podcasts regularly. Until then, remember, everything can be fixed. Everything needs maintenance. Deferred maintenance is costly and destructive. Take care of your stuff, people.